Hi again, Year 10, welcome back. Hope you had a good weekend. Thank you for watching the video on Friday and for your feedback. This is going to be a brief video which talks you through the process of actually writing about an unseen poem in the exam. So I don't want too much of an exam focus at this stage, but it just gives a bit of context to what we're talking about of unseen poems. Let's have a look at where it actually comes up in the exam. So it's paper 2, section C. So once you've written about inspector calls and once you've done your anthology question, there's more. There's actually 2 questions on unseen poems, but actually we're just going to focus on the first one today. So you get given a poem, like the poem I showed you last week, for example, and you get a question on that for 24 marks. And then they give you another poem, and you get a question comparing both of them. But that's only for 8 marks. And we'll look at that perhaps next week. For now, we're just going to focus on the first of those 2 questions. Here are some example questions from past years or from sample papers. And you can see that they're always going to ask you how the poet does something or how the poet presents something. And they're generally going to ask you about either ideas in the poem or feelings in the poem, or both. You've got one here from a couple of years ago about attitudes, but it amounts to the same thing, really. We're looking at ideas or feelings, or both. And in the question we've got here from last week's poem is both. In Paris Review, how does the writer present, I should say, little typo, ideas and feelings about love? In the exam, you've got about 25, 30 minutes probably to write your answer here once you've planned it. So I'm thinking maybe 3 paragraphs max. You kind of got a plan in terms of how to do this, because last week you wrote down 3 ideas or feelings from the poem, a quote to back up each one. So that gives you kind of your plan, and it'd be useful to have those notes to hand. It would also be useful, I think, at this point to perhaps pause the video and reread the poem, remind yourself of the poem. So I'll give you a chance to do that, and I'll be back with you shortly. Okay, so welcome back. Hopefully you've had a chance by now to reread the poem. Let's talk about those 3 paragraphs then, and how we actually answer the question. So, as I've said before in class, here we go. When I sort of give you recommendations of how to write a paragraph, how to answer a question, it comes from looking at the mark scheme. So if you look here, it's the top end of the mark scheme for this question, and it's useful to know what is your marker actually going to be looking for. And you can see whatever level you're at, we'll look at level 6, but whatever level you're at, and it'll be the same as if you carry on down to 4 and 3, you're talking about the same 4 bullet points. So you've got to respond to the task and write about the poem. You've got to use references, or to put it another way, quotes. Then you've got to talk about the writer's methods, and then you've got to talk about what actually methods on the reader. And if you look here, response to the task, references, methods, the effect on the reader, it's the same at each level. So the only thing that changes is what you're doing. If you're on level 4, you talk about it being clear. It's not on the screen here, but talk about it being clear, and your grade 5, 6 comes in that way. If you're thoughtful, developed, if you're examining things and you're getting up to 7, and then up here, analysing, being critical, exploratory, that's your grade 8 and 9. But it comes down to these same 4 things. What can you say in response to the task? So what are your points about ideas and feelings, because that's what the task is asking you about. Have you got quotes to back it up? And then in terms of your explanation, can you talk about the methods the writer's been using and the effect on the reader? If you're doing that, you're ticking those 4 bullet points off, and for that reason I will try and structure a paragraph around about those 4 things. Right, let's have a look at an example of that. What would that actually look like? Well, think about the first stanza of the poem. And the first stanza of the poem that we looked at last week, the speaker is talking about the pain of love. So I could start off with a simple enough point like this. An idea about love in the poem is that it causes pain. Okay, so I've done the first thing. I've responded to the task and I've responded to the text. So I need some evidence to back that up. The mark scheme's looking for references or quotes, so I need a quote. Okay, and you can be thinking, oh, well, what quote would you use to back up that point? I've picked this one. Yeah, the speaker describes himself as talking wounded. Great, there are other quotes you can pick as well. And actually, if you're aiming for the top marks, it never does any harm to have a couple of quotes and a bit of explanation. So what's on the screen, that's pretty good. It'd be better if it looked like this. So I've got talking wounded, but I can add to that. He admits, I get tearful, suggesting that his previous experiences have resulted in lasting anguish and suffering. Okay, so far so good. Okay, pretty detailed because I've got two quotes, so I'm going to be aiming for those top grades. I'm halfway there. I just need to move on and do the methods, the language that the writer's using, and what's the effect on the reader. Okay, I'm actually starting to do that already because we're saying this is what it suggests to us as we read the poem. Alright, what about methods and language? Well, thinking about that talking wounded, quite a few of you pointed out in your responses last Tuesday about the fact there's a pun going on here and it's part of this sort of military semantic field. So let's use that. Here's my next bit of my answer. The writer uses a pun from the semantic field of war, as talking wounded sounds like walking wounded. Slight typo there, just need a couple of speech marks to finish that off. A phrase used to describe an injured soldier. Okay, and I've explained why is that from the semantic field of war. It might seem obvious to you, but it's always worth just explaining that to your marker. Okay, only thing we've got to do now is to say, well, what's the effect of that on the reader? And remember, you're not going to expect loads and loads of detail because, unlike the anthology poems, which you'll know inside out and backwards by the time you do your exam, this is going to be the first time that you've read the poem, unless you're really lucky. You just read it for the first time in the exam. So it doesn't need to be in loads of detail. It might be something like this. And you might say, well, he's wounded, he's tearful, I'm going to feel sorry for him because the language that the writer's chosen shows that he's suffering. And there you go, you've got your 4-part paragraph, and at this stage we're saying it's all good. Yeah, we've answered the question, we've used quotation to back up what we've got to say, we've examined the methods the writer's using, and we've talked about, well, what effect will that then have on readers. So something like that, if you do 2 or 3 paragraphs like this, grade 6 probably on this particular question. Yeah, it's less detailed than if you're answering a question on a text that you've studied for 2 years. That's only natural, that just makes sense. However, yeah, lots of us are aiming for grade 7, 8 and 9. How do we get there? Just keep developing it. Just keep thinking, what else can we say about how readers might respond? So, yeah, we feel sorry for the guy, he's wounded, he's tearful. But then again, it talks about it being a pun. Well, a pun is normally a humorous language device. So we might say, this creates humour, so we might also be amused. And maybe that makes us less sympathetic, because if he's able to joke about his experience, it's perhaps not as bad as all that. So that amount of detail coming in, it's thoughtful and developed. If you think back to the mark scheme, we said if it's thoughtful and developed, we're talking grade 7. Okay, something like that. And we might just then say, well, is there another layer of meaning we can bring out? Well, I suggest this. Now, if he's comparing himself to a soldier, he's split up with his girlfriend or his boyfriend, and he's comparing himself to a soldier who's maybe had these life-changing injuries in war, well, some readers might feel that that's a bit over the top. And actually, he comes across as overly self-pitying here. He needs to get these troubles in perspective. You might not agree, but it's certainly a valid reading of the poem. So we add that in. We've got a third possible interpretation, a third possible response to the fact that it causes pain. So we're going through sort of 3 parts here, really. First, we're showing we understand the ideas in the poem, or the feelings in the poem. Then we're showing we can explain, well, how has he got those ideas across? Well, it's through this quote, and it's through this method. And then it's this bit really here, the reader bit, which is the examination and the analysis, which then builds in the stuff that's going to lead us to the top grades. And it's about layers of meaning and different possible meanings or reactions. And that's where not only the as or because here, but also the however and the also come in handy, because you're showing that you're thinking in detail about the poem, thinking in depth, and getting to grips with this idea that we talked about in class. Poems are polyvalent, there's more than one possible reader reaction. Okay, so there's your example paragraph for unseen poetry question. And something like that, if you could do a couple paragraphs like that, or even better 3 if you've got time, you can be well up there towards full marks, no problems. Okay, so it's period 1 Tuesday. You've had a watch of the video, you've had a reread of the poem, etc. Yeah, by all means you might need to pause at some points and just make sure you understand the process that I've kind of gone through and modelled here. But you should still have a fair bit of time left this lesson, and you can probably guess what I'm going to ask you to do during that time. It's this. Yeah, we've gone through a paragraph together. Okay, albeit we can't do it as interactively as we would in class, and as hopefully we will be able to do again soon. But you've seen the process of creating a paragraph, and now have a go at doing one of your own. So there's a reminder of the question there and the structure. Use this paragraph as a model and pick a different idea about love or a different feeling about love that the speaker seems to have in this poem, and try and write about it in that same way. Okay, obviously if there's any questions, any problems with that, if you're not sure about anything, or once you've done your paragraph, if you want me to have a look and mark it, just drop me an email, no problem at all, or a comment on sharing my homework. So thanks very much again for listening and tuning in. I hope you and your families are staying well and keeping cheerful, and hopefully I'll see you really soon. Okay, bye for now. See you later.